everyone, I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man here to guest star on Vigilante Mode Reviews to talk about my new movie, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. What are you doing here?
Well, you told me to come and talk about the new movie, so I'm here talking about the new movie.
Did you get my email?
Yeah, I got your email, groovywebs87@gmail.com.
Dude, you're here like a year early. Like, your movie doesn't even open until July 2017. Have you even started filming yet?
Well, I mean, after the success of Civil War, I figured it'd be really nice.
Yeah, look, dude, everyone loved you in Civil War. You were great, but, you know, this is an X-Men review, okay?
Oh. This is embarrassing. Are you sure? You can't use me at all today?
Yeah, you gotta read your emails more thoroughly, bro.
So ridiculous. I mean, it came all the way out here from Forest Hills. I mean, such a jerk.
Initiate Vigilante Mode.
What's going on, guys? Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he was doing here. I mean, he's a little early for his movie. I mean, he's just a glory hog, so, you know, don't worry about him. He won't be back for a little while. Welcome back to Vigilante Mode Reviews. Here today to talk about X-Men Apocalypse. There's a lot to talk about with this one, so here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna do the first half of this review in a non-spoiler fashion, and then the other half of it is going to be a little bit more spoilerish, so I will make it clear when that transition happens. Let's get started. For some odd reason, this movie is getting a lot of critical panning. The critical consensus is that this movie is very poorly made and not a very good film. I am inclined to completely disagree. Now, that's the thing about film and art in general. It's completely subjective, and that's wonderful. I think that's the best thing about art and film. With that said, I was expecting this movie to be a lot worse than it was. In fact, I actually really enjoyed it. I will say this movie is really for X-Men fans, so perhaps that's one of the reasons why critics didn't really connect with it. Rewind back into history a little bit, like 2000, the first X-Men movie came out. It was a surprisingly big hit. The first two were great, the third one was terrible, and then we got this sort of rebooting of the universe starting with X-Men First Class. So this is ostensibly the third act of this trilogy, the X-Men First Class trilogy. So perhaps, you know, general critics aren't really aware of that, or whatever. For whatever reason, they didn't like it. The Age of Apocalypse storyline is something I've never read. So my liking or disliking of this movie has nothing to do with what's in the comics. Some of the things I liked about this movie is that, for one, I felt like it had a lot of depth. I felt like it was very powerful in terms of the storytelling and what the characters were fighting for, which is consistent throughout the entire series. I loved a lot of the performances. I don't think really anybody was bad in the film. Some people shine more than others. You have a huge ensemble piece, and you're really trying to balance that out. All of the X-Men films, or at least the good ones, they feel like action, adventure, science fiction, fantasy. That adventure theme of it being really prominent, really being like a globe-trotting adventure and going around the world and trying to save it. So I felt like this movie really did have that in spades. The action was really great. Some of it got a little repetitive after some time, but you know, is to be expected in any superhero movie. Evan Peters as Quicksilver is phenomenal. He's great. Why wasn't he, like, you know, in talks to play the Flash or something like that? I was surprised that they were able to kind of but deliver a sort of Quicksilver sequence akin to that one that was in Days of Future Past. Not better, but it was still really fun and really cool, and they did a lot of cool new things special effects wise, and I was very impressed. I will say that the new additions to the cast were really wonderful. Sophie Turner and Ty Sheridan as Jean Grey and Scott Summers Cyclops respectively were really standout performances. They seemed like they were really invested in their roles, and they kept up with like a lot of the veterans like Fassbender and McAvoy, who were amazing, as always. And I just love Magneto. Magneto has been one of my favorite parts of this new X-Men saga. This really kind of steals the show. He's really like the most powerful character and grounded character. But McAvoy is great too. I love this sense of humor that he's imbued with Xavier. It's fantastic. This is not a perfect movie by any means. I'm just saying that this movie I think has some really odd backlash to it for reasons I'm not sure I fully understand. Was it as good as Civil War? No. Was it as good as The Dark Knight? Absolutely not. But was it about as good as like Avengers Age of Ultron? Yeah. Jennifer Lawrence, she's one of my favorite actresses at the moment. For whatever reason, I think she might just be a little bit overplaying Mystique, and it shows. She's a little bit wooden. Some of the dialogue perhaps that they wrote for her wasn't really that like powerful, and I just think that she might be ready to move on. So I think it just was visible in the movie. Her character arc was really great in the film. The villain, Apocalypse. Now, I think one of the major problems with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the villains. They haven't really been that consistently good. You have a Loki, you have a Red Skull who gets like an honorable mention. I did like what they did with Baron Zemo. And the X-Men franchise in general, I think they've always had a strength with the villains. William Stryker, Magneto. Oscar Isaac gave a great performance from my point of view. I thought he was invested in the role. He did a lot of work, acting through the prosthetics, which cannot be easy. With that said, I think that some of the beats of Apocalypse are a bit repetitive. Was he mustache twirling? No. But was he like, Palpatine-esque? Yes, and I love Palpatine, so I was kind of vibing with the villain. Some of the things he was doing with his powers were a little questionable. I thought that the pacing was pretty good. I didn't feel bored. I was engaged throughout the whole thing. I was seriously sitting there waiting to not like the film, and I didn't really find any moments like that. Moments where I was maybe taken out of the film and thinking to myself, oh, that's a plot hole, that's a question I have there. But did it make me hate the movie? No, not at all. Some of the action lacks maybe a little bit of potency, but I still think that some of the special effects work was really phenomenal. So let's sum it all up. I liked the movie. I didn't think it was like the greatest movie I've ever seen. Is it my favorite X-Men movie? No. But is this movie as bad as I thought Batman vs. Superman was, and disappointing as that? No. Was it as bad as Fantastic Four? No. Was it as good as Civil War? No. So this movie was kind of middle of the ground for me. So I'm gonna give this movie a B. A solid B. It definitely held my attention. I was excited watching it. I got a lot of the Easter eggs, but I think again, this movie is for X-Men fans. It's not really just for general public people who want to see a movie, because I think there's a lot of those moments that are really designed to excite people like me and maybe people like you. If you are not an X-Men fan, I think you would enjoy the film. It's fun, it's a good action adventure ride, and a good summer movie. So let's get into the spoiler section now of this video. So if you've not seen the movie, don't watch this part. You can deactivate vigilante mode and come back to it after you've seen the film. This part of the review might actually answer some questions that even I had walking out of the theater. So first, let's talk about the Wolverine cameo. If you saw the third trailer, you would have seen that there's a little bit of a snick. I was pretty much expecting Hugh Jackman to make a cameo in this movie no matter what. I was surprised that they went as in depth with kind of a little bit of an arc for Wolverine in the movie as much as they did. There were some moments where people were sort of laughing at maybe some of his awkward running and body language. I was kind of one of those people who was kind of laughing a little, just looked a little silly, but come on, it's always a pleasure to see Wolverine on screen. I mean, you might recognize the sort of apparatus from the Weapon X storyline, something that they didn't put in X-Men 2 and some of those other Wolverine films, where I guess it has the sort of simulation thing, helmet that he's wearing. So it was really cool to see that. To top it all off was the post-credits scene. While they're cleaning up all the wreckage from Wolverine's escape, men in suits, they walk in and they basically take samples of Wolverine's DNA and stuff like that in vials, and they put it in a suitcase. So there's kind of two parts to this little Easter egg here. The DNA within those vials is meant to be a little bit of a allusion to perhaps X-23 appearing in a future film. Now, for those who don't know, X-23 is Wolverine's clone, also kind of his daughter, who is a female version of Wolverine. She's the current Wolverine right now in the comics, and she's also a prominent member of X-Force, one of the movies that they're going to be doing after this one. The second part of that Easter egg is once the gentleman closes the briefcase, you see on it, it says Essex Corp. Now, Essex Corp is a reference to another X-Men villain, Nathaniel Essex, who is, as some of you might know, Mr. Sinister. His character is really well known for studying like genealogy and lineage within family trees, and also trying to combine mutant powers. So there was like a little bit of that happening with Apocalypse, like stealing mutant powers and having all of them within him. Sinister is very well known for basically combining the powers of Scott and Jean, or being like obsessed with trying to fuse their powers. After she dies, he clones Jean Grey. Scott falls in love with that clone. Her name is Madeline Pryor, and they have a son named Nathan Summers. Nathan Summers is Cable. Now, if you've seen Deadpool, Cable is definitely going to be a part of the X-Men universe within the next several films. So it's really cool to me how they're like connecting Deadpool with the main X-Men films to show that there is like that connective tissue, which just means I think we're gonna have even more crossover. Now Simon Kinberg, the guy I met on the street, who I'm gonna have like a coffee with sometime soon, which is gonna be really exciting. I can't wait to talk to him about these ideas. He's basically the Kevin Feige of the 20th Century Fox, Marvel universe and stuff like that. So he's kind of like writing the scripts, making these decisions about, who's gonna be in what and like what movies they're gonna do. Obviously, the end of the movie had this really, really cool moment where the X-Men were wearing their suits that are very reminiscent of what they wore in the X-Men 90s cartoons. So those are my thoughts on X-Men Apocalypse. Did you see the movie? What did you think about the movie? What did you think about some of the Easter eggs that I mentioned in the spoiler half? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Also, I shot another spoiler discussion, so these spoiler discussions are going to be more geared toward these like bigger releases. So stay tuned for those. Spoiler discussion for X-Men Apocalypse should be up within the next day or two. Until next time, guys.
Vigilante mode deactivate.
Talking about movies.